The vessel groaned as it ground against the obsidian piers, the sound echoing across the black water. Luna, Sauna, Dona, Ava, Vamp, and Subaru stepped off the deck and onto the slick, jagged stone of the Dark Sea district. The air hit them instantly, a thick, heavy mixture of salt and rot that clung to the back of the throat. Every breath felt like inhaling damp earth. Beneath their boots, the dock was uneven, polished to a mirror finish by centuries of tide, forcing them to adjust their balance with every step. The horizon offered no light, only the oppressive, flat expanse of the sea pressing against the shoreline. They moved in silence, the weight of the atmosphere dampening their usual momentum. Vamp checked the perimeter, his eyes scanning the shadows that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the waves. There was no wildlife here, no sound of insects, only the rhythmic slap of dock water against the stone pilings. They reached the end of the pier and turned toward the massive, looming silhouette of the palace. The path ahead was narrow, flanked by crumbling statues that seemed to lean into their line of sight. They did not stop. They marched forward, boots clicking against the obsidian. They pushed through the heavy iron doors of the throne room, the hinges screaming in protest. Inside, the air was stagnant, untouched by the sea breeze outside. Queen Ava sat motionless on her dais, her gaze locked onto a sprawling map spread across the stone table. Crimson ink bled into the parchment, marking a jagged, mountainous region. As the group approached, she did not look up, but her voice cut through the silence like a blade. She pointed a finger at the map, her nail tracing the borders of the red smoke forest. "The rosebat has nested there," she stated, the words vibrating against the cold stone walls. "It exhales a fog that strips away reason, turning even the strongest mind into a hollow shell." She finally raised her eyes, scanning the faces of those standing before her. The weight of her command filled the room, leaving no space for hesitation or debate. She gestured toward the exit, her hand trembling slightly as she pulled the map away. They turned in unison, preparing to depart. The forest line appeared as a wall of jagged, twisted timber. As they stepped beneath the canopy, the air shifted. A thick, rust-colored mist rolled in from the hollows, swirling around their boots like living smoke. It was heavy, metallic, and tasted of dried blood. Vamp signaled for the group to hold their breath, but the fog was persistent, seeping into every gap, curling into their nostrils and ears. Luna stopped walking. Her shoulders dropped, and the tension in her jaw vanished. Her eyes glazed over, the pupils dilating until they were wide, vacant pools. She turned toward Subaru, her movements fluid and devoid of hesitation. She lunged, closing the distance in a single stride, and pressed a firm, lingering kiss onto her lips. Subaru froze, her hands hovering in the air before her shoved her back with a grunt of shock. She stumbled, her heels catching on a protruding root, and her fell hard against the rough bark of a pine. Her face flushed a deep, burning red, her pulse visible in his neck. Luna stood perfectly still, her breathing shallow and rhythmic, staring past her as if the forest were a garden of light. The mist continued to coil around them, thick and suffocating. Vamp lunged, fingers digging into the muscle of Luna's shoulders. Her shook her hard, her knuckles white against her skin. "Do not inhale the mist," her barked, his voice straining against the unnatural quiet of the woods. "It forces the heart to act on impulse, not thought. Fight it." Luna blinked, her focus snapping back to the present as she swayed on her feet. Before she could recover, a sudden, sharp pressure drop hit the clearing. The air above them began to churn, leaves whipping into a frenzy as the dense canopy tore open. A gust of wind, cold and smelling of ozone, slammed into the ground. Arena and Fern descended, their arrival marked by the rhythmic thrum of displaced air. Arena raised her staff, the wood glowing with a pale, steady light. She began a low, rhythmic chant that vibrated in the marrow of their bones. A massive gale erupted from the staff, a concentrated torrent of wind that tore through the rust-colored fog. The mist did not just dissipate. It was shredded, swept away in seconds. As the air cleared, The true scale of the forest became visible. High above, clinging to a gnarled branch, the rose-bat loomed. Its wings, jagged and translucent like broken glass, caught the dim light, shimmering with a predatory, cold brilliance. The creature shrieked, a sound like grinding metal, and folded its wings to drop like a stone. It hit the forest floor with a force that cracked the earth, sending a spray of dirt and splinters into the air. Luna shook her head, blinking away the last remnants of the haze, and drew her blade in one fluid motion. She lunged, but the bat was already moving. It pivoted on a single claw, its wings whipping out like jagged razors. The glass-like edges sliced through a thick pine trunk, felling the tree in a shower of wood chips. The group scattered. Subaru rolled through the mud, his blade ringing as it deflected a glancing blow from the creature's tail. The bat moved with a blur of unnatural speed, darting between the trees. Vamp shouted orders, but his voice was swallowed. Every strike they landed against its hide simply skidded off. They were being hunted, forced into a corner. The bat banked sharply, its wings carving deep furrows into the bark of the surrounding trees. It was gaining speed, turning the clearing into a lethal cage. Vamp ducked beneath a sweeping wing, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He watched his companions struggle, their blades failing to find purchase. He realized they were outmatched. He planted his feet, ignored the debris flying through the air, and locked eyes with the others. "We need more power!" he roared over the screeching wind. "Use the fusion spell!" Subaru heard the command and pivoted. He looked toward Irina, who stood near the edge of the clearing, her staff vibrating. Subaru sprinted toward her, dodging a jagged claw that tore up the earth inches from his boots. Irina met him halfway, her expression set in grim determination. They reached out, fingers locking together with a sharp, resonant snap. The air between them began to warp, pulling light into a single, blinding point. Their forms blurred, merging into a singular, towering humanoid figure. The creature shrieked and pulled back, sensing the sudden shift. The fused warrior stood at the center of the clearing, its presence dwarfing the surrounding trees. With a single, sweeping motion of its hands, it tore the air apart. Localized tornadoes erupted from the ground. The rosebat shrieked, its wings straining against the sudden, crushing pressure. It tried to climb, beating its glass-like wings. The creature was tossed like a leaf, spiraling downward as the vortex tightened around its body. The warrior did not pause. It surged forward, moving with a grace that defied its massive size, and raised a hand. The air condensed into a blade. The bat saw the strike coming and flared its wings, but the warrior was faster. It brought the blade down in a clean, vertical arc. The rose bat let out one final, choked cry before its form shattered. It did not bleed. It dissolved into black soot. The tornadoes died away, leaving only the silence of the woods and a single blood-red gemstone pulsing in the dirt. Luna stepped forward, her boots crunching on the scorched earth where the creature had vanished. She knelt, reaching for the object that lay amidst the settling soot. It was a gemstone, deep red and rhythmic, pulsing with a faint, internal light that seemed to beat in sync with a heavy heart. She picked it up, and the air around her hand grew instantly cold. The group gathered close, their faces drawn and weary from the fight, but no one spoke. They turned back toward the palace, the forest mist now thin and harmless in the wake of the battle. The walk was silent, the weight of the stone in Luna's palm acting as a constant, unsettling anchor. They reached the throne room, the heavy stone doors groaning as they pushed them open. Queen Ava sat on her dais, her posture rigid. She looked up as they approached, her eyes darting to the object in Luna's hand. As Luna stepped forward to present the prize, the queen stood abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. She did not reach out. She pulled her hands behind her back, her fingers trembling violently, and took a sharp, jagged step away from the light of the gem. Her face paled, and she stared at the pulsating stone with eyes wide and fixed in genuine, unadulterated fear. The queen kept her distance, her gaze locked onto the pulsing red light with a mixture of revulsion and dread. She gestured sharply for them to move back. "Do not bring that closer," she commanded, her voice thin and strained. "You have no idea what you have pulled from the earth. That is a forbidden relic, a remnant of a time when the world was nearly unmade." She paced behind her throne, her hands clenching and unclenching. It does not merely cloud the mind or deceive the senses. It feeds on the host. It drives the holder into a state of permanent, irreversible insanity, slowly twisting their humanity until only a mindless beast remains. A heavy silence filled the hall, broken only by the rhythmic, hypnotic thrum of the stone. Luna felt a sudden, sharp urge to look into the gem, a pull that made her fingers twitch, but she forced her eyes to the floor. The queen stepped forward, her expression hardening into a desperate command. "It is a poison that cannot be contained by walls or wards. You must take it far from here. Bury it deep in the earth where no soul can find it, where the light can never reach it again. If it stays, it will consume this kingdom from within. Go now, before the hunger takes root in you." She turned her back, refusing to look at the object again. The group stood frozen for a heartbeat, the weight of the stone now feeling like a mountain in Luna's grip. They turned toward the heavy doors, the finality of the queen's warning echoing in the cold, still air of the throne room.